point, to station thousands of spaceships that travel from planet to planet. Their ships travel over 311 miles per second, that's over 18,660 miles per minute. This group has antimatter beam weapons. Earth terrestrials will not have antimatter beam weapons until about the year 2990 AD. And it is this weapon they will use to vaporize the planet Mars from the solar system in a brutal interplanetary war. It will be the last war the Earth man will fight, before he realizes peace is the only way. I would like to broaden the question on one point. Are you saying that you are going to come as owners of the house, and not as strangers? Well, I have already said that we are not going to do anything bad to anybody. Now, once you have done the mischief by your hands, nothing is more logical than that we benefit you. We Aquarians, by force of circumstances, have learned to be realists. This question is comparable with a fable that my father always told when I was a boy, which is as follows. A man who had innumerable cages thought it well to place birds in almost all of them. He had two hanging one beside the other. In these two cages the birds were multiplying. One came to the point where there was no more room for more, but they lived well adjusted and were each contented with a place to sit. All those that the man allowed to hatch, also were given the means to live. Contrary to the first, the second had plenty of space, however they commenced to quarrel, each one wanted the better place. The stronger lived comfortably and the weak had to get used to the street corners and be satisfied with the crumbs. The roost there was left to the strong. Each one wanted to be better and to control. Finally a struggle broke out, so fierce that they mutually destroyed each other, and with them also most of the weak ones, who had nothing to do with this. The man, on seeing this, gave access to those of the other cage of which he moved half to the first. These went there and reconstructed the broken nests, resuscitating some of those who had escaped with their lives, and thus they were able to live in peace for many years, without worrying about the problem of space, as much in one cage as the other. I understand the moral. Unhappily for us terrestrials, perhaps this same thing is going to come to pass. It is somewhat similar to Earth and Acart. I sat with my head down. After some minutes of silence between us, I asked, "Do you not feel that you have erred in showing and explaining to me all this with respect to your arms and means of locomotion? Since once I return to Earth, if I am given the time to do this in the manner in which you have explained all, I think the government would give me the necessary means, and I have the impression that I could come to a conclusion." He swallowed dryly and leaned back to respond, and then between reprimanding and fear, he said, "Well, in the first place, I believe you are not even thinking of doing this, and second, the terrestrials at the moment do not have materials to this end at their disposal. But please, do not speak to me of similar things anymore, because if anyone here suspected what we are doing, perhaps you would have to live here on Acart the rest of your days. I cannot say anything more, because I cannot judge their capabilities, neither in one thing or another. Only then was it that I saw where I had put myself with my foolish suppositions, and I responded. But it is not that I judge myself capable of this. It is scarcely a supposition. This I know, but you are not going to want to nuke these suppositions known to the Son of the Sun and the Council." Saying this, he stopped talking, and remained with the fingers of his hands interlaced, pensive. At one time he came to see a seemingly poor man there who seemed to have fallen outside. His clothes were unusual compared to the others, and seemed to be dirty also. And they described to him that he was a criminal. But as they had no prisons, those went around free, but had to beg for the living, as they had no longer any access to the advantages the society gave the rest. All got their sentence from what they had done. those could not enter any public establishment to obtain what they needed. The prisoners were marked with a medallion to wear around their neck, and could not be taken off until the penalty had been through. They could neither travel by any of the public transports, and when they were in prison only to walk around the streets begging for food. Some sat out food for them, like for wild animals, and it was indeed humiliation. Those who were married could get some help from their wives or children. Below their cities, there ran parallel automatic subways, which ran at different speeds. When they reached the end of the station, the subway went back and all operated automatically, and the passengers could make a stop at the station they wished. It all operated on electric power. On his last day on that planet he was also taken to a sport-like arrangement where two teams fought a pushing competition, never seen nothing like it. But they also had a football-like competition. It is to remark that this sport field had artificial grass, something that was not yet made here on our Earth at that time in 1958. After the sport visit, and a farewell greeting to the sun, he was taken back to the family of Acart, and said goodbye in a short manner to them. He was also told the problems they still had regarding space travel, and they told him it was best to stay unconscious for the part of this trip, because his body was not yet used to the gravity in space. We must remember that this race was in the first steps regarding interplanetary trips. They departed from the planet returning Arthur back to Earth. He slept part of the trip to their space station, about 50,000 km out in space, so it was not much time for him to get used to it. There was an enormous platform in space. There was like a city there, and houses that look like igloos, and all out had to wear special suits. On the return trip he was also showed around the ship, which had 3 levels. The first and third had less rooms than the second. The lower had small ships, and some kind of solar weapons also. They reached the middle level by an elevator, and it had laboratories, rooms and corridors. In the various compartments we entered, we always found humans seated in front of super complicated apparatus, covered with instruments of all types. The motor room where they created the propulsion force was 5 by 5 meters, and in the middle of it were 6 motors, about the size of a barrel of gasoline, arranged in 2 rows or 3, one above the other. He was told that these captured and transmitted the solar energy moving the ship. Only 2 worked at the time, the rest for reserve, in case the others malfunctioned. All made of matter, he was told that it was impossible for them to malfunction. The ship had other motors used in the atmosphere. He was told the ship had a normal crew of 32 people. After many days in space, the ship came to Earth, but first they landed in an icy place he was told was on the pole, and he drew the conclusion to be the south. From there on, only a short time till they led him out of some kilometers from his house, to where he was walking before the bright light and lost consciousness, and he felt so heavy being back on Earth. After some time and confused, he spent days inside his house. He began writing down all this he had experienced, and he reported everything he remembered of Acart. But they went on with further contacts with Arthur, after his return.